All right, guys. Hey, it's Luke with Luke Humphrey Running, and I want to talk a little bit today about three types of goals that people should be thinking about as they're mapping out not only their training but their racing seasons coming up. Um, a lot of times we focus on one type of goal, and we determine our success or failure based on that, and that's a tough way to go because there's just so much more to what's actually going on around you as far as the training and racing, and to define it by one possible outcome is tough. And so I want to talk a little bit about today about those three types of goals and how you can use them to set yourself up for not only short-term success but long-term success as well, and make sure you're defining success more than just what a time on a clock says, right? So the first type of goal is what I just mentioned, was an outcome goal. So this might be something like, hey, I want to win a 5K, or I want to place top 3 in my age group. Essentially, I want to achieve some sort of outcome. I want to finish a race, finish a segment healthy. I've been hurt the last 3 times I've tried to do this. I want to finish it healthy. Those are all outcome type of goals, right? And so we're basing our success on the outcome of the training and racing, right? And so we do this a lot of times. Outcome is not necessarily the most popular of the three. One might be to actually qualify and get into Boston. That would be a good one. We'll use that example again here in a second. But so that would be, I get that. That was probably the most common one I get, is I want to qualify for Boston and be able to run Boston, or I want to run the world major, something like that. Those are probably the most popular ones I get. The second type of goal would be a performance goal, right? So this is more about the time on the clock, right? I want to break 4 hours in the marathon. I want to run a BQ time. Whatever the case is. I want to qualify for the Olympic trials. Whatever, they're all hinging on running a certain time, having a certain performance in the race. And so it might seem like they're pretty similar with outcome and performance. However, they are still different, right? Because going back to our Boston example, let's say, I want to run a BQ time, and I want to actually get into Boston. Well, many of you run that Boston qualifying time, but you don't actually necessarily, it's not a guaranteed entry into Boston. So you might have hit the performance goal. You did what you needed to do, but the outcome wasn't in your favor. And the problem with that is that's not even in your control, right? And that's kind of where we're getting into this. Like, if you say I want to qualify for Boston, and you ran the Boston qualifying time, well, you did everything you could control for, but you have no control over whether or not that's going to be good enough for the cutoff or not, right? And so that's where the problem gets in. So is it a success or is it a failure, right? So that's where you have to kind of define what is actually going to mean a successful training and racing segment for myself, right? And so the third one is our process goals, right? So they're not really tied to the outcome or the performance per se. However, they do help in those final goals that you do have for the season, right? So the thing is, like, let's say if I run it, going back to that Boston qualifying time, what are my things here, right? So what am I going to actually do to get there? And this is something that kind of work with our athletes on, is that, okay, so I have this end goal that I want to reach, but how am I going to get there? Well, if I have to run a 3:05 marathon, well, then running 30 miles a week probably isn't going to help get me there, right? If I'm doing 30 miles a week and that's it, probably not. So we have to figure out what steps can we take to get our mileage up, right? So that might be a process goal. I want to build from 30 miles a week up to having a baseline mileage of 45 to 50 miles a week, and then peak at 60, 70, whatever the case is. I want to practice my fueling on all of my long runs, all of my tempos, or I maybe put it like I want to, like, 3/4 of my long runs and tempos, right? Because it's gonna be hard to make 100% on anything, right? There's gonna be some one time where you miss or you forget or whatever, right? So something like that. Or I wanted to get stronger by adding the LHR core routine 3 times a week to my daily routine, right? Those are all examples of process goals. So those things I can measure along the way. I'm not relying on the end race to determine whether or not I'm having a success or failure. And the way I look at it, the process goals are what's going to help you reach the outcome and the performance goals, right? So you can measure those along the way. You can always reset on that too. So if you get 3 weeks into your segment and you realize, man, I've only done it, 3 times over the course of a month, then I can hit that reset button and I can restart on those process goals, right? So you're getting more regular feedback, and then it's going to help you reach those goals by, if you can stay consistent with those and ultimately get to those, you're going to put yourself in a better position to reach those performance goals and the outcome goals and things like that. So that's the thing. So where do I put my emphasis on? It's honestly a little bit of all three, right? So I don't think it's a bad thing to have an outcome goal, right? But I wouldn't tie all of my success or failure into that goal, right? I think it's good to have a performance goal. And for the most part, most of my athletes have this, because what are we doing? We're using that performance goals as the basis of what we need to do for the training. So I don't have a problem with that either. Whereas, again, I wouldn't put my success and failure all into those things, right? And so even going back to the example of the Boston qualifier, maybe I didn't reach, maybe my BQ time was, 3:15, and I ran 3:10, which was good enough to get in, but my performance goal was actually around 3:05. So I didn't get my performance goal, but I got my outcome goal. And then, so you can go back and forth on those things. What's going to make a true successful segment or not? So just those are all kinds of things to do, but I would put some emphasis on all of them. So kind of work back. Outcome goal, that's going to be, to me, optional, whether or not you're going to put that in there. Like I said, most people are looking at like, I want to get into Boston or something like that. But think of some things you want to have as good positive outcomes for you, and something that you could potentially reach to. Same thing with the performance goal. And like I said, we use that as the basis of our training a lot of times, right? So having that as our angle, and then we can work back to where we're at now at the start of our segment. Okay, what steps do I need to take in my training or in my lifestyle, whatever the case is, and focus on those things. And so I would look at that, maybe make a list, and you might have 10, 15 things on your list. And that's where people tend to get a little overwhelmed. And so I would say just go through and pick what's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. So if you don't eat, if you don't practice your fueling at all, right? That's an easy thing. That's an easy thing to work on. That's going to give you a big bang for your buck. So find like 1 or 2 things that you're going to give you the most bang for your buck, but not necessarily be the most involved types of things, right? So, and just kind of work through that and use those as your process goals as you get going. And then maybe if you get really comfortable with those, you can add more later on. And once the first goals have really become automatic and part of your daily habit and daily routine, then you can move on from there, right? But make it easy on yourself. Just pick 1 or 2 things that you can focus on right away, and then slowly expand out on your list of things you need to improve. So that's how I would approach it. That's how I kind of look at it with athletes that we're working with. And I try to find really kind of the most simple things that we can do first, right? Keep it easy first, and then gradually expand out to the harder things. So it's not bad to have those, especially the performance goals, because I know that a lot of people, that's the first thing they look at. But the big thing I have to tell you is that you have to look at how you're going to get there. And if you don't have a plan on how you're going to get there, it's going to make that performance goal ultimately even harder to get to, right? So break it down. And that's all we're doing with the process goals, is we're breaking it down into smaller and smaller things. So it's going to, over time, put our capacity for work, our capacity to be able to handle certain things into what was hard 6 weeks ago will be easier now, right? And so that's what we're looking at. And then, like I said, you can use those things to measure your success all along the way. And if you did everything you possibly could, and you got your race and it was unseasonably warm and you just didn't have the performance that you wanted, you can still look back and say, hey, I did all these things right, and I've set myself up really, really well to, when I do get the right day, I'm going to be able to have that breakthrough performance, and I'm going to be able to reach those goals, right? And then you're not so distraught about it, because you've taken a lot of steps forward, and ultimately that you're capable of doing those things. Then you got to wait for sometimes you just got to wait for the right day too. So hopefully that helps you. That's how we work with our athletes on goal setting. But if you enjoyed that, you want to go even more in depth, check out more at LukeHumphreyRunning.com. We do have a goal setting course that is available for members of our Run Club athletes and for our coached athletes. So, all right, take care, and I will talk to you later. All right, see ya.